Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Second Nature, a show about living with ecological grief and loss. My name is Ashlee Cunsolo, and I am your host for this podcast and this episode. And I am so delighted to be joined today by someone who I deeply admire and who has been such a tremendous influence on my life, on my way of thinking, on my work, and on who I am as a human. So I'd like to welcome hunter, carver, elder, adventure, advocate, and human extraordinaire Derrick Pottle, who lives in Riglet, Nunatsiavut on the north coast of Labrador. And Derrick has been just such an incredible guide through all this work that I've been doing over the years. And we first met in 2009. And at that point, we started talking about all this work around what was happening with changes on the land and changes in climate and how it was impacting people in his community and himself and his way of life. And since then, Derrick has been such an incredible research lead, mentor, guide, friend, confidant, someone that keeps us accountable, someone that makes sure that we're doing things in a good way. He has traveled all over the world talking about Inuit culture, Inuit heritage, self-determination, climate change, and he does extensive work throughout all parts of the North to make sure that Inuit voices are at the forefront of discussions and are heard and respected and valued. So, Derrick, it is such an honor to welcome you to Second Nature today.
Thank you, Ashley, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Derrick, I mean, we've been talking about these things since 2009. And even before then, I know that you've been talking about these things all over and trying to sound the alarm about what you were seeing. So, I'm wondering if we can go back and if you can reflect on when you first started to notice changes in the environment, what was happening, and how you started into this work of sharing Inuit wisdom and knowledge and sciences on climate change.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, probably 20, 25 years ago, we started hearing through the news and through personal contacts with individuals in particular that was living in the North. And we were starting to see the weather patterns were changing. And back then, and before that, if you spent time out on the land and lived on the land and spent your life connected to the land, you couldn't know more than what, today's technology that we have. You can't accurately 100% dictate what the weather and patterns are going to be, but same as the people who lived on the land for millennia, we learned from our forefathers and from them being out there as to what you saw in nature, uh, the the way that the ice would freeze, the way that the animals would behave, and the snowfall, and all of these clues gave you an idea of what you could predict for the upcoming seasons. And we were starting to see a change in those patterns and those routines. And back then, and rightfully so, uh, it was all about the North is changing so fast, and it has changed so fast. In 25 or 30 years, we've seen a huge, huge change in the way that the environmental, weather and patterns and systems have impacted our lives. Um, and like you said, in 2009, we were talking about this, and we were predicting that, you know, we're really, really hoping and praying to some degree that the all the predictions would be wrong. Here today, fast track to 2024, I can't even barely get out of my community. There's no snow. Uh, I drove my snowmobile up on. We don't have road access, so we're isolated. Our in and out now to this community here is by a twin otter aircraft and or by snowmobile. The traveling conditions are so horrific now that you can barely travel around. You're just causing more damage and more danger to your equipment and to yourself. It's like a sheet of ice. Lake Melville, from the dock in Goose Bay down to the end of Back Bay, is an inlet in a huge inland ocean of water, which is 150 miles long and 14 and 15 miles wide in some areas. And I could physically skate. I flew over that on Friday on an airplane, and I could actually physically skate with a pair of ice skates half of Lake Melville, where we should have probably 3 or 4 feet of snow on the ice. And I'm looking out through my window now this morning having a cup of tea, and the land, if there wasn't a calendar or it's cold, not cold, it's probably negative 15 here this morning, a beautiful sunny morning, but you're looking at the land, and if you didn't know the difference, you swear it was the end of May or early June. There's absolutely no snow on the land, and it's totally impacting people's lives. You don't hear snowmobiles going. I went for a walk yesterday, a 7 kilometer walk, and I never saw a snowmobile. And on a
Mhm.
Sunday afternoon, there should be snowmobiles passing. Your arm gets tired waving to people, and I never saw a person. And it's horrible. It's just horrific. In my memory, I've seen thaws and I've seen freeze ups and I've seen midwinter you get a couple of day thaws, and but we had a snow base. You had a lot of snow that you could recover from it and it rebounded.
Yeah.
But last week here we had temperatures, as you know, you lived in Goose Bay and you saw it in Goose
Yeah.
Bay. We had temperatures that was +9 and +11 degrees, and it was in Goose Bay last week. At the end of the week, it was the parking lots and the roads and everything was flooded with water. I drove across the land from southern Labrador into Goose Bay, which was probably about 600 kilometers, and believe me, I've never seen as much water for this time of the year ever in my life, and so our early predictions and our early concerns that we were hoping would go away and would not be a reality, to me now it's kicked in. It's kicked in big time and it's here. Last year we had a very short snowmobile season, and the ice was very late freezing up. I would cross over as a trapper and a hunter. I would cross over the inlet of Lake Melville anywhere after the middle of November. Crossed over in 1988 on 2.5 feet of ice, the 18th of November. This year and last year of 23 and 24 and 22, it was the end of January before I could get across that same inlet. So, and the ice that we're getting is not like ice. It's 6 inches of ice, 3 inches ice on top that's froze hard, and then you're lucky to have a foot and a half of just like slush that's barely held together underneath that. So as soon as the sun comes out on it, and here we are now, Doublemere. Doublemere is another inlet that goes to the northwest of us and is 60 miles long. And there's no snow on the ice. I flew over there the other day and it's just blue ice. And the baby seals now are being born. People are finding dead seals that's froze to death because those little baby seals don't have a snow cover to live underneath. And we're seeing the ugly side of the negative side of all what we predicted. And we would sit around. I remember the first time I met you and some of the first conversations we had, and it was almost like there was almost humor into the way that things are changed, and because simply we didn't know what it was going to turn into, but now we're living here and you lived here pretty much ever since, and this is the reality of what we're seeing. Some areas of Labrador have a little bit of snow, but nothing compared to what we should have, and that's all along the coast, the north and the south coast. I had a message from one of my friends right up at the most northerly tip community in Nunavik in Selawik a couple of days ago, and they were telling me the same thing. There's no snow up there. There's very little bit of ice, and so it's moving. It's moving faster than what we think it is.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's so interesting because I do remember in sort of 2009, I mean, at that point, in sort of climate change discussions, Inuit had been talking about it as being at the front lines and really raising the alarm, decades before the rest of the world was actually paying attention. I mean, there were a few people paying attention, but it wasn't something that was widely discussed or widely thought of. And I think a lot of people didn't believe it at that point. And so here we are, 30 plus years later, since Inuit have been saying something is seriously wrong, to seeing the catastrophic effects all over the world, and people now being really at the front lines. And I think there's so much, particularly because we know North and Labrador is the fastest warming place anywhere in northern Canada and anywhere in the circumpolar North, has been seeing these changes for so much longer than other places and has been dealing with them and thinking about them and researching them and advocating about them and trying to get these sort of, global shifts to understand what's happening. And then I agree, here we are in a tremendously bad year, and everywhere that I go and everyone I'm talking to is so stressed out, upset, worried, anxious. It's disrupting everything. And I can only imagine what it's feeling like in Riglet, and for you who relies so much on being on the land for everything, for your wellness, for food, for culture, for connection, for community. And I can't imagine what this year is like for people.
Yeah, no, it's certainly way beyond what we're normally used to. Like you said, everything we're hearing and everything we're reading now and everything we're seeing, through the world, all over the world, it's a world epidemic now. It's beyond the north. And, whether it's a flood, a forest fire, a tornado, whatever the weather uh, is throwing at us, it's all over the world. And, unfortunately, here in Labrador, um, we need cold weather. We live in an area where we have to have snow and ice. And if you live in isolation, well, I don't even use the word isolation. It's not, I never felt isolated in my life. It was my home and it was just the way that we lived. But we don't have road access. And we have the fly in the goose bay now this time of the year, which is very, very expensive, and you're so restricted to the amount of equipment or supplies that you can bring back. The airlines allow you to take, I think it's 50 pounds per passenger on those small planes, and if you have excess, if you want to go shopping, if you need, we're so limited with the small northern stores that we have in our communities. We need a road access, or we need a ferry system that allows you to prepare ourselves to live here. Everything from household food, supplies, snowmobiles, outboard motors, everything comes into the community either through a plane or through a boat. Well, let me just share this with you. My wife and I, we have family in Ontario, and my wife and I drove back from Ontario. We got back to Goose Bay on the 2nd of January. The traveling conditions in this winter has been so horrible. Half of my gear is still in the back of my truck in Goose Bay yet because I just haven't been able to get in there to get it. The weather is not allowing to me. This week I thought I would get in to get the rest of it. Well, I'm not going like this. If I have to go like this, I'll beat everything up. I'll destroy my equipment, and I just it's not practical to do that. You're going to spend more money on beating up your gear and replacing your gear than what the value of what you're getting, what you have to bring back. So I may have to wait until the ferry system starts. And like you said earlier, I'm a carver, and all of my tools are in Goose Bay in the back of my truck. So if I don't get to retrieve those, I don't carve. So there's a whole impact on everything. And Ashley, we got to know each other over the years and respect, and became friends over the years, and we welcome each other into each other's family. And Wendy is my wife is a big part of my life, as much as and the land base and the activity is important to her as much as to me. And in the 43 years that Wendy and I have been married and been together, it's the first year that we have not got to our cabin. We have not been to our cabin in this past winter because the distance we have to go, the horrible conditions that we have to travel through. I'm eligible to go back into the polar bear harvest hunt now, and honestly, I don't. If conditions don't improve, I'm not even going to attempt the polar bear hunt. You get a little bit. It's the part of our culture, and it's a part of our identity. But there also has to come an economical factor has to play into that. Am I going to destroy a $20,000 machine to go on a polar bear hunt? And my answer is no for that reason. I just simply can't afford to do that.
No, Derek, the conditions, I mean, everywhere are, I mean, hearing that your stuff is stuck, that you can't go out on the land, that you're not being able to participate in things that you have for your entire life. I'm wondering if you can share with people who might not be familiar with the North and with the beauties of Nunatsiavut and Riglet and Northern Labrador, why the connection to land is so important and why it's more than just an inconvenience when we have little bits of climate change, and tell people about your relationships with the land and Inuit relationships with land.
Well, it's the land and the sea and all the animals and mammals and the whole environment that we live into, to me, it's like a breathing, living organ. It's a part of who we are. It's alive as much as people are themselves. And when you become a part of that, it's almost like a part of your family. It's a part of your identity. And for as long as I can remember, that's been a part of my life. And, just to have that lifestyle and that ability and that access taken away from you, it's almost like you're losing a big part of who you are and your identity and that lifestyle. Even though, yes, we have to. There's no denying it that the world that we live in today in 2024 is not the world that we lived in 30 years ago. The technology have changed, the access have changed. There's events that's way, way beyond our control that we have no control over. As a hunter and a harvester and a gatherer, I could, I, I could make a good living on living off that land by trapping, by harvesting, by selling seal pelts, by selling polar bear hides. But you know, all of these factors and all of these pressures from the outside world has played a major, major role into the ability of people again to make a living. Like somebody comes over and puts a ban on polar bear skins and seal hides, I can't sell them anymore. So that's basically a part of my livelihood that's gone. We live and believe me, I strongly believe in the value of conservation and looking out for the resources that we have. But in this world that we live in today, we live in under so many guidelines and so many rules and regulations and policies that for the most part, Inuit never had no decision in the making and the developing of it. We can't kill caribou, we can't harvest caribou anymore. Uh, I think we have one moose for our community here, Atlantic salmon, which we grew up onto and ate, and codfish. We don't have a codfish fishery here anymore. The population is bottom right out. Salmon, Atlantic salmon. Uh, I'm permitted to take 7 salmon annually, which is, 7 salmon. There's families in Riglet could eat 7 salmon in one sitting. And so those are the changes that we're seeing, all of these changes. But being connected to the land, not only with the environment factors, but everything that's forced is a very powerful word, but everything that's all the rules and regulations and guidelines that they expect Inuit to comply with. In many cases, again, we don't have a say into it. For instance, a polar bear license. As a polar bear harvester, because our quota is so small, I have to wait 2 and 3 years if I get a polar bear before I can harvest again. And your few little dollars that you get for a hide nowadays, may cover off a couple of trips out on the land. There was a time when Labrador Inuit and Inuit in general, which are the only population that's permitted to harvest bears, are Inuit. And, people were getting 15, 20, even more than $20,000 for a hide. So you're lucky to get $2,000 or $3,000 for a hide in today's sales that we're living into. And it's not only with polar bears, it's with all raw wild fur. We're dealing with issues and concerns and guidelines that we have no control over. And it comes right down to that the way that it impacts people. And it's so expensive to go on the land now. And unless you go out and you're harvesting wisely, a lot of people, in order to go out on the land, had to get something in return to cover off their trip out on the land. So that's what we're seeing now, and it's become like a recreation now. It's not a livelihood; it's a recreation because it's so hard, it's so expensive, the weather is so bad, the conditions are so bad. It's just like every time you turn around, there's something coming at you from one perspective or another, and it truly has impacted. It has impacted people's lives. People who want to live out on the land or go out on the land. There's not everybody want to do that, but for us that still want to do that, it's becoming more and more challenging. And honestly, this winter of 2023 and 2024 has been by far the most challenging winter that I've witnessed so far in my lifetime.
Mhm. And how are people responding in the community this year? And I mean, I know the people aren't able to travel, but what's it doing mentally, emotionally? You talked about the financial implications. Also, I know there's food security challenges because people rely on this time to be able to get healthy food for their families.
Yeah, and again, I remember sitting with you probably early in our conversations, and back in '09, 10, and a little after that, and it was very, very rarely talked about the connection of people spending time on the land and the connection to people's mental health. We, the Inuit governments and the governments of all indigenous groups, I guess, have spent countless of millions of dollars on the studies and the value of that importance of being connected to the land and people's health throughout all the findings and all of the after work and discussions with people and groups that have spent time out on the land. And if you go talk to an individual who has that true connection to the land, you will find that the best thing in the world, there's no other therapy, there's no other programs, there's no other medication uh, that keeps people healthier than being connected to nature. The land, the sea, the environment doesn't always have to be harvesting, doesn't always have to be killing, it doesn't always have to be collecting. Sometimes it's just the value of going out and making on a fire and have a cup of tea on the land, or bring your children or your grandchildren or your family just to view, just to take a few pictures, just to see a whale, an iceberg, a polar bear, or just to see nothing, just to hear nothing, just to have that peace, to be at peace with yourself and your surroundings. And when you're challenged of being out there, people really suffer. I mean, there's statistics after statistics after statistics to prove that some of the not so nice aspects of society come to the forefront when you're restricted between what we used to call the freeze up and the break up at the times when you were stuck in the communities when you couldn't get out, and that's when the shit happens, and it's still continuing now. We could be on the land, like I said, from mid-November to sometimes in some communities, and here in Riglet, I've been on the sea ice in June. Last year, I put my snowmobile up the middle of April and couldn't get back out. And really, that's a long period of time that you're stuck here in this community and you can't go nowhere. And never before in my life, and I think I shared this with you, never before in my life, except for the last couple of years, have it ever crossed my mind that do I really want to live here in these times when you're just stuck in the community? You can't go nowhere, you can't do nothing, you're just going around and around in a circle. You can't get out on the land to harvest, you can't even get out to seal hunt because it's just hurricane force winds all time. And you're just basically you're almost like a prisoner in your own home, in your own home territory. You can't do the things that you wanted to do. And so far in the game, uh, personally, my mental status haven't been impacted. Have a very strong support team around me, and you've been blessed with the ability to, you know, basically control, not always do what you want to do, but at the end of the day, you're thankful for what you have, but it's not what we're used to. And but it really plays on people's minds. It really impacts people. Like I said, just to get out with your family for a couple of hours out on the land, and you have to ask yourself, how much damage am I going to do to my equipment? How much is it going to cost me, or what have I got to go through to get out there? And sometimes it's a hell of a lot easier just to sit down and watch TV than what it is to get out on the land.
It's so heartbreaking too how fast the changes have happened. I mean, even since we've been working together in the 15 plus years, the changes that have occurred, we're moving faster on the projections than people thought. And I know, you hear the standard phrase around the world is 1.5 to stay alive, meaning we don't want the global temperature change to cross on average 1.5 degrees. But Labrador, especially the North Coast, has already gone 3 to 4 degrees above seasonal average temperatures and is on track for 8 to 11 degrees. And, when you think about what's already happened and then you think about more average change and you think about a place, as you said, that, Inuit have the right to be cold, need cold, desert, like that connection to cold and to snow and to ice is so integral to thousands and thousands of years of history and connection to land. And then you think about what will happen if those projections come true and if we have that 11-degree change. I mean, the some of the projections are showing Nain, which is the northernmost community in the region, having the same temperature as St. John's within the next 50 years. And you think about that catastrophic shift. And I always think about when we were doing Lament for the Land, the film together, when Tony Anderson at the end of the film says, Inuit are people of the sea ice. And if there's no more sea ice, how do we be people of the sea ice? And how profound a statement that is about what happens when people for thousands of years who have this incredibly rich history, culture, understanding, way of knowing a complete other presence and existence in the world and relationship with the world are suddenly challenged to that extent. And I think we're seeing hints of it over the years, but this year has been such a strong year. I mean, it's untravelable now in so many places, and people can't get out, and unseasonably warm, and Environment Canada released their projections and it's looking very, very warm for the rest of the spring. And I just, I think about it all the time about how will people cope and adapt, because the government talks about adaptation all the time. Oh, well, we have to adapt, we have to adapt. But what if things aren't there to adapt back to in a way? And what will people do? And what about if you cross thresholds of adaptation where you can't get those things back? And I wonder, with all the work that you do and all the talks that you do, and I know you work a lot with government and you try to advocate and raise the alarm. If you've been talking about those things around adaptation and what's going to happen if these projections come true, which it looks very likely, especially the last few years, we can clearly see the trajectory that we're on.
In order for us to live here and continue on to some degree with the lifestyle that we have, the present day and going forward, we're certainly not going to be able to live the lifestyle that we do. Over the last couple of years, and somewhere along the lines, as you said, why do governments build roads in and out of areas, and you make the Trans Labrador Highway, or you make the 401, or you do whatever you do, some of these big super highways, and you go outside of You go outside of Labrador, well, Labrador in a lot of areas now are connected with a road access. But for people here that don't have that road access, for the equipment that we use, the snowmobiles that we use, the ATVs that we use to get out on the land, with the present day trail systems that we have, we're not going to do it. It's impossible to do it. Somebody has to take the initiative, and somebody has to start the process. Uh, from a personal perspective, I have went to the Inuit government here in Riglet on several occasions, and 2 weeks ago, I called the Ungukuk and I said to him, "We need a few trees cleared out up here on the road where we have to go over a hill," and it was all ground then. I was up there Saturday and there's not a tree cut. And I don't know if there's any intentions to do it, but you have to listen to the people that goes out on the land, because if you don't know, how are you going to correct or minimize or mitigate the challenges that we see? And so you have to work with the people who know. We definitely have to have money spent into a true, feasible, usable road system, because the present day system that we have, unless we got 2 or 3 feet of snow, the trail system, what they call the groove trail system, you can't use it. It's impossible, because all they done was they cut a trail through the woods, and the land is so rough, and there's boulders, and there's huge boulders, and like the land, the hills, the contours, the dips and the valleys is impossible to get around. It's just totally impossible to get around. So until we get some dedicated way of thinkings and some willingness to go after funding that's going to support people, because we go all over the world, man. We go all over the world, and we talk about how valuable it is to us to get out on the land, whether it's for our mental health or whether it's for this or that or everything else, but we can't get out of town. We can't get out of town, man. We can't get out of town. When the good time of the year comes for us to be out on town, we're locked into communities. We can't get out. And to your point, I have said this all of my life, and I'll say this till I die, and I hope that's a long ways off yet, but I strongly believe that Inuit were born to be outdoors, not in a house, not sitting on a couch or watching whatever or playing with whatever, or with all of these devices. They're good value into that, and we can't live without it. But there's more to life than sitting down playing on an iPhone or playing on a computer, being locked into a computer night and day. And but that's what it's coming to. People got to have something to keep their time occupied, and this is all you got. This is what people is going to turn to. But there has to be a way, man. There has to be a way that somebody got to start getting seriously, and somebody got to start putting funding into clearing out road accesses. I've seen places in Labrador, in particular on the south coast, where they have some of the most beautiful trail systems that you could ever want, and they're usable. They're usable. People can get onto them. But here, you drive a stump up through your snowmobile, and you got $5,000 worth of damage. You hit a rock with your. We always hit rocks, but you go on a trail and you come back and you hit your front suspension. You're probably looking at $4 or $5,000 to replace that. So how the hell do you get around doing that? You make a better system that you have right now. Right now, the trail systems and what's happening too, Ashley, is that all of these old trail systems that the people used long before Riglet was established in the 1700s, all of these with the impact of global warming, warmer temperatures, the vegetation where we're living to is just choked the land, and they're not accessible anymore. And we have to open them up. These are the best trails. They were there since Inuit was here in this Grosswater Bay and Nunatsiavut area, and that's the trails that we used. And they come in and they tore up the land, and we can't use them anymore. So we have to go back. We have to go back to the simple things, and we have to go back uh, and put in place again the things that worked. Because right now, uh, like I said, I'm no way, man. I'm going back up on that trail system. Uh, I may go up this afternoon to find out to see if I can find another way to go without having to go through that 3 kilometers of just gravel and rocks and sand that I'm going over. But I'm going to see. If I don't go out there, nobody else is going to.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's incredible that we're early March and these are the discussions that you have to find a place that has maybe a hint of snow because everywhere is open ground and open dirt and moss and shrubbery
Yeah.
and I mean I think the changes with the huge loss in sea ice but also the quality that you were talking about earlier in our conversation about and I think that's something a lot of people don't realize like they'll think okay there's less sea ice or it comes in later but also when it's there that the quality is not as safe and that we might get some storms but the winds are so strong it's blowing the snow away so even when the snow starts to accumulate it's not packing in and the animals are changing and the shrubification of Labrador, which, for those of you who haven't heard that term before, it's when the temperatures are warming and now different shrubs are starting to grow and grow bigger, and now it's impeding trails and it's impeding trails for humans and for animals. The change in the caribou population here, and everything that's happening with the animals, new species coming in, species leaving, things moving further north. I mean, it's just such a whole scale change of an ecosystem which then impacts people so tremendously, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally or spiritually or culturally. It's a transformation of a region, and I don't think there's too many places around the world, although certainly are some that have really faced what Reglet and what Nunatsiavut is facing right now. And I find even in our own province, we have the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Labrador is, the largest landmass by far. And yet, when we think about provincial understandings of climate change, people are still thinking it's not happening in the province or it's still far away. And then, meanwhile, we have this huge region that has just gone through such transformations in the last 3 to 4 decades, and that's still not being acknowledged, and I find that contradiction of what people such as yourself are living and going through and experiencing versus what the external understanding is, and so the importance of getting the stories, the voices, the experiences out there so people understand that this isn't a future impact, that this is now, and that this has already been happening for decades. And I think that's what's so powerful about the work that you've been doing all these decades and all the travels that you do and everyone that you talk to and all the education that you're so generous with your time to show people that this is here, it's happening, it has been happening, and we're out of time. We're out of time to do something. Like we have to act now. But I know you work on some of the larger climate change advocacies and connect with different places. Do you do any discussions? You mentioned earlier talking to your friend up in Salouit in Nunavik, but in terms of what's happening with other Indigenous groups across the North, I know you travel and talk regularly. What are their experiences that are happening in other northern regions?
Well, like you said, I was up in Grease Fjord and in Resolute Bay, uh, in the a year ago in March, and most two northerly communities in Canada are being impacted by the changes that they're seeing in the environment. The lack of snow, the amount of wind, like you said, everything is blowing away. There's no snow on the ice. The seals' pups are dying because they don't have a snow cover to live underneath. Um, People are being impacted. Not only mammals but land animals and so it's everywhere. I talk to people in Sax Harbor. I talk to people in Klugtuk in in um, Johaven, all along the North Selawik, Greenland. Um, I talked to a lady there a month ago in Greenland. They're seeing polar bears coming into their areas now in southern Greenland where they never ever saw them before. They're migrating down, and there's a real issue with um, global warming there. The ice fields are breaking off. I've traveled to Greenland and I've seen uh, marine glaciers that was down out in the water 10 years ago, and now they're 3 kilometers back on the land. They're alpine glaciers. No, they're not marine glaciers anymore. So you go out on the Labrador coast just outside of from where we're here now. Last summer, right up until the end of September, early October, all on the horizon in the ocean, as far as your eye could see, it was nothing but it was just dotted with icebergs everywhere. And, what did that tell you? That the icebergs are not going up north, they're coming down south. So the warmer temperatures, the ice is breaking off and it's not growing anymore. The ice is not, the snow cover is not there, the temperature is not there. So the ice cover is not there anymore. I traveled to Australia this past year and spent time in the desert with some indigenous people over there, and they went through one of the most uh, horrific floods in history that was ever recorded in their land, and never before they've seen the amount of water and how fast and the volume of it that came and destroyed, totally destroyed communities and infrastructure and killed hundreds and hundreds of domestic animals and also in wildlife, like the kangaroos and all the animals that's native to that part of the world. So like you said, it's happening all over the world. And like we talk about it in our circles of friends and colleagues and people that that's sharing this. But to your point, like what you said, I think we have to go in a different direction, because I see in particular in Canada, and God love Canada, we're happy that we live here, and we're very, very blessed that we're not living in some of those terrible, terrible places that some of these horrible things are happening to people in the world. But what I'm seeing and I'm finding, rather than try to correct or do something and put something in place before these events happen, it's after the fact that the politicians will come around and take pictures, and it's almost like a photo op. But what the hell have you done, to prevent this before you came, after the incident happened and the infrastructure is gone or the roads are washed out or we can't get around? And to your point, unless you live here, it's not on your radar because you don't live it. You don't. But if I went out in the outside world and I tore up the 401 of the Trans Canada Highway with heavy equipment, or I prevented the plows from plowing the roads where they do have snow, you damn well see how quick that impacts your life. So that's what's happening here. That's what's happening here. Only it's a different role, and is environmentally different, and the equipment that we use is different. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make no difference where you live. When you impede people from living a normal lifestyle from what they're accustomed to, and live for hundreds and thousands of years, and you expect people to how do we adapt? Like really, the way that we have the equipment that we have. Well, you're talking about going back in the old ways. It's so bad here now. We were going to take a group of youth out and uh, give them an opportunity to go on a dog sled ride. Well, there's no way. There's no way. There's no snow on the ice. It's just blue ice. Those poor dogs would not survive. Uh, Even a very, very short outing. They tear their feet up, they break their legs, or they have an accident. So you imagine now if we were depending on dog team and walking around. Like I said, I never walked with walking sticks. I went for a walk last evening. I had to have two, to keep me upright because the roads are so slippery. But there's nowhere else to go. You have one trail that you have to follow through, and that trail is not usable. So how the hell do we bring people together and start to think in a different perspective of what do we need to make life? You're not going to make it perfectly, and there's not always going to be everything that you need or everything that you want. But come in and talk to the people. The levels of government, the right from the community level to the highest level, provincial and federal and Inuit governments have to come and talk to the people, and they have to get serious about Do we want our people out on the land, or do we want them stuck in the communities?
Mhm. Yeah, and then making sure that when they're having those conversations, they're including not just the sort of infrastructure fix or the technocratic fix, which is super important, but also how are people feeling? How are they coping? What do we do with the loss and damage that we're seeing? How do we support people as they deal with the mental and emotional health, as they deal with the grief and the loss and the change in cultures? And so having that perspective when governments are making policies too, I think is this whole conversation has pointed to that, that it has to be a holistic approach that takes into consideration culture and history and connection to land and love of community and love of people and what other infrastructure changes can happen that can support people in continuing that connection on the land and supporting them if they're no longer able to travel safely or access food or supplies. And so that whole holistic approach that you've shared, Derek, has been so important. And I really want to thank you for this conversation, and also thank you for all the years and years that we've worked together and everything that you've shared with me and with everyone out in the world as you share these stories about loss and love of land and culture and advocacy and change and suggestion. It's such a generous gift that you've given to the world, and it's made such a difference to so many, including myself. And I really thank you for being here today and sharing this with the listeners.
Well, I thank you too, Ashley, and it's always a pleasure to, and there are a lot of caring people that's out there that they really care about the people who live the lifestyle that we live, and they certainly want to make a difference. They become our family. They become our friends. They become a part of our communities. Does it make it easier? No, but it makes you feel that everything I do, everything I say is not going in one ear and out the other, because I do know a lot of people that come and care and participate and look for uh, ways to correct or ways to improve uh, everything that we're talking about now. They put the bug in other people's ears and they send the message out, whichever way it is, through connecting with people that can make a difference, or such as you're doing now, to get to let it be known to the rest of the world. And it makes us feel like we're not alone, and that we have an ally in our corner, and that's so meaningful too, not only from our local uh, perspective and connection and knowledge and everything that we have to offer, but when we have people that's coming in and spending their whole careers and living here and making this place our home, it certainly makes a lot of difference. And I've been honored and blessed, and it's such a pleasure for me to work with people like yourself and so many other people that come and genuinely care. So, nakumina.
And the honor is all mine, Derek. And thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining for another episode of Second Nature, Living with Ecological Grief. For more information, you can check out and like and subscribe to the podcast and join us for future episodes. And just to end, I love sharing the Francis Weller quote that says it takes outrageous courage to face outrageous loss. So courage, my friends, and until next time, take good care. This was Second Nature, Living with Ecological Grief. Thank you for joining us today for another powerful conversation about environmental love and loss. And of course, the conversation continues. So please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and visit ashleeconsolo.ca for more information. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and take good care.